Alright, Dave here. As you can see, I finally got my Oculus Rift. It's the DK2. I just got it last Thursday, and so I've had it for almost a week now. Originally I was going to do an unboxing video, but then the more I thought about it, everybody's done unboxing videos. There's 15 million of them practically on the internet. So I'm just going to pretty much run over the top items that I liked, or the top things that I liked about the DK2, and the top negatives that I saw. Now, full disclaimer, this is the first virtual reality headset I've ever owned. I've never really even tried much of anything else. I did not have the DK1, so I've just got the DK2. And so yeah, I was going to start down my list. Now the first thing, my computer specs that I'm running, I've got an i7-960 processor, I've got 24 gigs of RAM, and then I've got a brand new Asus 780 Ti graphics card. So I've got a pretty good system for pushing this thing. So when I go over some of the negatives, I would rather not have people comment and be like, oh, well, it's because your rig sucks, you're running it on a toaster, or try stacking that thing on a potato. I've got a pretty good gaming system. If I were to hazard a guess, I'd say I'm probably in the top 95 percentile for hardware, just for standard gamers. So that's first off there. So I guess I can just go down this list. There's 5 different items here that I wanted to comment on real quick. So I'll just go ahead and get started. Alright, so the first thing that I wanted to talk about was I've been a part of the forums quite a bit. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos of other people using the Oculus Rift, both the DK1 and the DK2, and I was pleasantly surprised at how little screen door there was on the Oculus Rift. Now the screen door is where you see black lines in between the pixels. With the lenses, the way they distort the screen, it's a standard screen, but the way they distort it, it zooms like way in on it. Obviously, so it feels like it fills up to your field of view. But you can see the black lines in between. And while it's noticeable, I didn't think it was really that bad. I was really expecting a lot worse. When I read stuff on the forums, especially after hearing about the DK1, and I know that's obviously quite a bit different resolution-wise, but I was really expecting much more of a problem for gaming and stuff. But it's really not that bad. It's noticeable, like I said, in games, but it's really not that bad. Mainly you notice it in areas where you're looking at like a giant bright sky, where you have bright colors that are almost like a solid color, and then it's pretty noticeable. But it wasn't near as bad as I thought it was going to be. So that would be the first thing that I was pleasantly surprised with on DK2. Alright, next. I was surprised with how light it was. I know everybody says that when they first get it, but it really is light. You look at it and you think, okay, all this heavy plastic, you got the cabling, the straps, the foam, the screen, the gyros, who knows what else. It really, if I was to like compare a weight on something, I would say it's probably the same weight as maybe 2 iPhones stacked on top of each other. Not the iPhone 6s. No. But it's really not that heavy. It was comfortable to wear. The longest period I've gamed with it, I was playing Elite Dangerous, and I probably put in 2 hours, 2.5 hours, something like that. And combine that with the way they do the straps on the back. Now the straps are really great, I think. They're easy to adjust. You've got your 2 buckles here, and they can pull in and out to adjust the horizontal head strap, and then the vertical head strap on the top, just a matter of lifting it and cinching it down, whichever way you want it. I like to wear my strap a little bit higher because otherwise it cuts into my ear, and I find that annoying. Now, of course, the one downside to the straps, and that would be the case with anything, is it kind of makes you look a little bit dorky. Your hair gets all messed up, but whatever. So let's see here, what else I got. Alright, next, the field of view. The field of view on that thing, it's rated, I think, 100 degrees field of view, 95, something like that for the DK2. And while it is less than, obviously, real-life vision, both horizontal and vertical, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And the main reason is, and I thought about this after I got it and I started using it, I was like, why doesn't it seem more claustrophobic to me? When you look at an object, like, say I want to look at my computer over there or whatever, I'm not going to look with my peripheral vision off to my right. I'm going to turn my head and just look right at the object. So really, my eyes are normally looking in about this big of a box. If I want to look at something over there, I'll turn my head and my eyes stay in that box. And that's kind of the way it works with the Oculus. So while the field of view could always be better, always could be bigger, I hear that the release version is rumored to have maybe 110 degrees, something like that, 120. That would be awesome. But it's really not that bad. A lot of people described it looking through a small window, or maybe through a toilet paper roll, something like that. I thought it was a lot better than that. It didn't really hinder any of my gaming experience as far as the field of view goes. So I was pleasantly surprised at that. Alright, next, let's see here. Alright, last but not least, for the things that I thought were particularly good with the DK2 that surprised me, the 3D. Now, I've used quite a bit of 3D. Obviously the red and blue glasses that are from like the 1980s. I've used those. I've been to IMAX 3D theater. I've been to standard 3D theater. I've used home systems that have 3D, whether it's just passive or the shutter glasses. I've used a Nintendo 3DS quite a bit, and I've never really been that blown away by 3D. It's always seemed like one of those things where it's like, okay, that's kind of a nice feature. It's cool novelty almost. It's nifty, but it's not really something that I ever considered a must-have for either video watching or gaming. And something like 4K, you can see the difference between a 1080p video and a 4K video, and there's a big stark difference. And once you get used to the 4K, it's really hard to go back to the 1080p. I've never really felt that way about 3D, but that was until the Oculus Rift. The 3D in this thing is the best I have ever seen by far. Like, if I was going to give a $50,000 IMAX system, and I don't even know how much they cost, but pretending it costs that, 3D IMAX system, if I was going to give that a rating like an 8, this thing would easily be a 15 to a 20 on a scale of 1 to 10. That's how good it is. The 3D, there's never a point where something's out of focus in the games. There's never a point where I feel like I'm being forced to look at one perspective. There aren't items or images where it's like way off in the distance, you're like, oh yeah, that's just matted together. In a flat image. It's very 3D. You start looking around buildings like castles and whatever in the Oculus, especially the Tuscany demo that comes preloaded with the SDK, and you start looking at like the fountain and the wall sconces and the fireplace and stuff, and it really, really looks 3D. And that is by far the thing that I am most happy with on the DK2 so far. I just can't get over it. The 3D is worth the price tag by itself, in my opinion. Alright, so now I'm going to go over some of the negatives. They're not really negatives, but just kind of downsides to the Oculus that I've seen so far. The first one would be the cables. Now, when they advertise this thing, when I say advertise, when they show you their little book and it's got the instruction manual or whatever, this is pretty much what you see. One cable, that's not too bad. What they don't mention is at the end of this cable, and they probably do mention it, but it's not heavily advertised. At the end of this cable, this little breakout box, which is a lot smaller than the DK1 breakout box. I think it was quite a bit bigger. You've got two cables coming off. You've got your HDMI, and then you've got a standard USB, and that's great. But then also you've got a 12-volt plug-in, and that runs back to a wall wart, which I hate wall warts because they never friggin' sit on a power strip. So the least you could do is go to a brick and then another tail up to the wall wart. So you've got that right there, and then on this side, you've got a 3.5mm headphone jack that is the sync cable that goes to the camera. And so you have that cable that then runs up to the camera, and then attached to the camera is another USB that goes back to your computer. So while you have this, you actually have another 3 cables on top of it. And instead of them all going back to your computer or something, one of them actually runs from this device to the camera. And it's definitely a little bit cumbersome, and it leaves something to be desired as far as the cabling goes. Now, I'm sure it's a lot better than DK1. Is there room for improvement, in my opinion? Yeah, definitely. I don't know where they would go. I'm not an engineer with that. I don't know if they could use DisplayPort and have information from like the USB going through the DisplayPort. I'm not sure if they can get rid of the sync cable or maybe do it via Bluetooth from the headset to the camera. I don't know if, maybe that's just not physically possible. But it would be nice to see the camera or to see the cables diminished in the future. So let's see here. What else is on my list of things I did not care for? Alright, the software install. Now, I know that this is the dev kit. Developer's kit. Do not expect this to be easy to use. It was actually somewhat easier than I thought it was going to be to get a few of the games up and working. They've got a part of the software that's called Direct to VR. It's either Direct to Oculus or Direct to VR. And that is great. It allows you to install a game. You can hit the Direct to VR portion, the shortcut to the game. It fires right up into the headset. You're all fine and dandy. Most everything's probably calibrated and you're set to go. The only problem being, at this point, is only about 20% of the games actually utilize this feature, the direct-to-VR. Everything else is played as a standard game, and you have to set up the Oculus as what they call extended mode, and that sets it up as a third monitor, or a second monitor if you only have one. And then you have to like drag the game over and try to get it to work. And sometimes it's easy to do. Once you kind of get the hang of it, it's not that bad. But sometimes it's straight out a pain in the butt. So while I wholeheartedly expect this to be fixed for the release version, especially the release SDK that comes out, it needs to be fixed. That's no questions about it. If they want this to be a standard product that a standard consumer can pick up and plug in and play, that has to be number one on their priority list to get working. And they need to get the SDK working properly. So, all right. So that being said, one other thing. Actually, I've got a couple other things I keep adding in my list here. So also, and this is only particular to the DK2. My understanding it's not an issue with the DK1, nor is it an issue with VR in general. But this guy right here, and I'm just saying this as a warning if you're waiting for yours and you're all stoked about it, it has got a bad stuttering problem when you go to play games. Now apparently this doesn't affect everybody, but it's affecting me, and it affects me in about 60% of the games I try to play. So that's why I'm mentioning it. When you look around in the world, you expect it to be nice and smooth. Be able to look up and down on your vertical axis and your horizontal axis. But as you look around, for whatever reason, it like stutters. So you sit there and you're doing this as you're trying to look around in the world, and you feel like you're having seizures. It's only a problem with the DK2, and my understanding is it's on the top of Rift's or Oculus's on the top of their list to get fixed. But that is something to think about. So if you're thinking about ordering one, or you're waiting for yours to come in the mail, that's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed, is the stuttering issue. From everything I've read, it has nothing to do with performance issues. I can run a game that runs on both monitors plus my Oculus at 60 frames or 75 frames a second, and then as soon as I get into this thing, I'm back to having seizures. It gives you headaches, or at least me, and it kind of makes me feel a little queasy. So whatever. That I'm sure is going to get fixed in the near future, but it's something to think about right now. So next on my list is other YouTubers. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos of people using the DK1 and the DK2. I was really stoked about getting mine, so as most people, I sat there and I watched YouTube videos all day dreaming about when I could finally get mine. And unfortunately, while this item is really cool and I really like it, and I use it for a lot of gaming now, it's not quite the way they portray it on YouTube. I've seen a lot of videos where they go to play a game and they, obviously they get the game calibrated or whatever before they start the video. But then instantly they put on the Rift and they're just so surprised at how realistic everything is, and the world is alive, and bees are coming at you, and there'll be a giant car that feels like it ran you over. That's not really the way it feels. At least for me, I'll put that disclaimer in there, but I would be surprised if that was the case for anybody. There are some games like Elite Dangerous where you put it on and it's like, oh wow, I'm in this cockpit, and wow, there's the hangar up there, and it actually feels like it's 50 foot tall or whatever. But then most of the demos that I've tried so far, I've downloaded probably about 20 or 30 different demos and different games and tried it on whatever. And a good portion of them are not well optimized. Things don't feel realistic. It definitely does not, while it's still a cool 3D experience and you still got a headset strapped to your face and all of that, it's not exactly some compelling world that you just feel like diving into and that's the rest of your life. So, I've seen, like I said, I've seen a lot of YouTubers that it's like the best thing since sliced bread, and they're so amazed at how perfect everything is, and they feel like instantly they're on another planet. It's not, at least for me, that's not really the way it felt. Maybe my bodily senses are a little bit more attuned to real life, but I was never actually fooled with that thing. It's fun to use, the 3D is great and everything, and I just gave you my account of Elite Dangerous. But even while I was sitting there in that cockpit looking at these cool 3D controls and stuff, I still knew I was in my office. I was still aware of my environment. I still felt like I was sitting there looking at a screen pretty much. So that's the best way I could describe it. It definitely, I didn't feel the presence. So, is that the case for everybody? Maybe not. I'm sure some people have different reviews for different games, but that's just the way it felt for me. So yeah, this has been my review of the Oculus Rift DK2, and hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions on the setup or anything for me, go ahead and feel free to leave them in the comment section. And thanks for watching.